My name is Tamara, and this is the story of how my life turned upside down. I was a happily married woman with a 10-year-old son, living what I thought was a good life. I worked as a teacher at the local school, a job I loved dearly. My husband, Mark, and I had been together for over a decade, and our son, Alex, was the light of our lives. I grew up in a loving family. My parents, John and Sarah, were hardworking people who always put family first. My father ran a small business making handmade furniture from natural wood. It was a craft he'd perfected over the years, and I admired his dedication. My mother was his constant support, helping with the books and customer service. Mark and I met in college. He was charming and ambitious, and I fell for him hard. We married soon after graduation, and Alex came along a few years later. Life seemed perfect, but there were cracks beneath the surface that I chose to ignore. My parents never quite warmed up to Mark. They always told me he was unreliable, but I laughed it off. I thought they were just being overprotective. "Tamara, are you sure about him?" my mother would ask. "Something doesn't feel right." "Mom, you're worrying too much," I'd reply. "Mark's a good man. He takes care of us." My father was more direct. "That man's got a wandering eye, sweetie. Keep yours open." But I was blind to their concerns. Mark treated them coldly, never wanting to visit. He'd make excuses every time I suggested a family dinner. "Why do we always have to go there?" he'd complain. "Can't we just have a weekend to ourselves?" I should have seen the signs, but love has a way of clouding judgment. One day, everything changed at work. A scandal erupted that would set off a chain of events I could never have predicted. It started with Jessica, a beautiful young teacher who had recently joined our staff. Jessica had a reputation. She'd recently left her husband for the father of one of her students. The gossip mill was working overtime, but I tried not to get involved. That changed when I noticed how she treated the man's daughter in class. "You're useless," I overheard Jessica say to the girl one day. "Just like your mother." The poor child was in tears. I couldn't stand by and watch this happen. "Jessica, can I talk to you for a moment?" I asked, pulling her aside. "You can't treat students like that. It's unprofessional and cruel." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "Mind your own business. You don't know anything about my life." I knew then that I had to do something. The next day, I went to the principal's office. "Mr. Thompson, we have a serious problem with Jessica," I said, explaining what I'd seen and heard. An investigation followed, and Jessica was fired. As she was packing her things, she cornered me in the hallway. "You think you're so righteous, don't you?" she spat. "I'll make you pay for this, Tamara. Just you wait." Life went on as usual after Jessica's departure. I focused on my teaching, my family, and tried to forget about her threats. At home, things were slowly unraveling, though I was too caught up in my daily routine to notice. Mark was spending more time at work, often coming home late. When he was around, he seemed distant, irritable. "How was your day?" I'd ask, trying to connect. "Fine," he'd grunt, barely looking up from his phone. Alex, our son, was growing up fast. He loved spending time with my father, watching him work in his workshop. The smell of fresh-cut wood and the whir of the lathe fascinated him. "Mom, can I go to Grandpa's this weekend?" he'd ask, eyes shining with excitement. "Of course, sweetie," I'd reply, happy to see his enthusiasm. But Mark didn't share our son's interest in my family's craft. "Why does he need to waste time with that old-fashioned stuff?" he'd complain. "He should be focusing on his studies." I defended my parents' and Alex's interests, but Mark's attitude was becoming harder to ignore. One Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. I was in the middle of a class when my phone buzzed. Seeing it was from the hospital, my heart dropped. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. "Mrs. Thompson?" a solemn voice asked. "I'm calling about your parents. There's been an accident." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My parents, the pillars of my life, were gone. A drunk driver had crossed the center line, hitting them head-on. They died instantly. I don't remember much of what happened next. Somehow, I made it through the rest of the school day, picked up Alex, and broke the news to him. His sobs tore at my heart. When Mark came home that evening, his reaction was oddly muted. "Oh," he said, his face blank. "That's unfortunate." I was too numb to process his lack of empathy. I needed support, comfort, but Mark seemed incapable of providing either. The next few days were a blur of funeral arrangements and paperwork. I took unpaid leave from work, juggling everything while trying to comfort Alex. Mark was conspicuously absent, claiming he needed to work to cover my lost income. "I'm doing this for us," he'd say when I asked for help. "Someone has to keep earning." The funeral was a small, somber affair. Friends and family gathered to pay their respects. Mark stood awkwardly at the back of the room, checking his watch every few minutes. He didn't offer a shoulder to cry on, didn't help with the guests. It was as if he was a stranger at his own in-laws' funeral. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was still struggling to find my footing. One evening, as I was sorting through my parents' paperwork, the phone rang. It was their lawyer, Mr. Jenkins. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm calling about your parents' will," he said. "Are you available to come in tomorrow?" I agreed, curious and apprehensive about what I'd learn. The next day, sitting in Mr. Jenkins' office, I listened in shock as he read out the contents of the will. My parents had left everything, their house, the furniture business, and all their savings, to Alex. They wanted to secure their grandson's future, Mr. Jenkins explained. I was touched by their thoughtfulness, but also worried about how Mark would react. When I told him that evening, his response was unexpected. "Huh," he said, a strange look crossing his face. "That's interesting." He didn't say much else, but I noticed a change in him after that. He started coming home even later, sometimes not at all. When I'd ask about his whereabouts, he'd snap at me. "I'm working hard for this family," he'd say. "Stop nagging me." I tried to be understanding, but doubt was creeping in. Was this really about work, or was there something else going on? My best friend, Lisa, noticed my distress during our weekly coffee meetup. "Tamara, what's wrong?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "You look terrible." I broke down and told her everything, about my parents, the will, and Mark's strange behavior. "I don't know what to think anymore," I confessed. "Am I going crazy, or is something really wrong?" Lisa's face grew serious. She reached for her phone, hesitated, then showed me something that made my blood run cold. It was a photo of Mark, kissing a woman who wasn't me. "I'm so sorry, Tamara," Lisa said softly. "I saw them last week. I didn't want to interfere, but you needed to know." I stared at the photo, my world crumbling around me. The woman in Mark's arms was unmistakable. It was Jessica, the teacher I'd gotten fired. How long have you known?" I managed to ask. "I only saw them that one time," Lisa replied. "But Tamara, there's something else you should know." She told me about the rumors she'd heard that Mark and Jessica had been seeing each other for months, even before my parents died. That they were planning something, though no one knew exactly what. I left Lisa's house in a daze, my mind reeling. All those late nights, the irritability, the distance, it all made sense now. Mark wasn't working late, he was with her. As I walked into the house, ready to confront Mark, I was surprised to find him already there. He was sitting at the kitchen table, an uncharacteristically serious expression on his face. "Tamara, we need to talk," he said before I could even open my mouth. I sat down across from him, my heart pounding. "Yes, we do," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. But before I could continue, Mark dropped a bombshell. "I want a divorce," he said flatly. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Despite everything I'd learned, hearing those words from him still felt like a punch to the gut. "You, what?" I finally managed to say. Mark's face was cold, devoid of any emotion. You heard me. I want a divorce. I don't love you anymore, Tamara. I'm bored with this life, with you. I found someone else, someone who understands me. I felt a surge of anger. You mean Jessica? I spat out. His eyes widened in surprise, but he quickly regained his composure. So you know, he said with a shrug. Yes, Jessica. She's the woman I've always dreamed of. Look at yourself, Tamara. You've let yourself go. You're not the woman I married. His words stung, but I refused to let him see how much they hurt. You want a divorce? Fine. You'll get one. But don't think for a second that I'll let you anywhere near my son or his money. With that, I walked out of the kitchen and up to our bedroom. My hands were shaking as I started packing a bag for myself and Alex. I knew we couldn't stay in this house anymore, not with Mark's true colors finally revealed. As I was zipping up the last bag, Alex appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide with fear. Mom? What's going on? I heard yelling. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself for my son's sake. Alex, honey, we're going to stay at Grandpa and Grandma's house for a while, okay? But why? He asked, his voice trembling. I knelt down in front of him, taking his small hands in mine. Your dad and we're having some problems. We need some time apart to figure things out. Now, can you pack a bag with some clothes and your favorite toys? We'll leave in a few minutes. As Alex went to his room, I took one last look around the bedroom I'd shared with Mark for over a decade. How had things gone so wrong? How had I been so blind? With our bags packed, I took Alex's hand and walked out of the house, ignoring Mark's glare as we passed. As I drove towards my parents' empty house, I felt a mix of fear and determination. This was just the beginning of a long, hard fight. But for Alex's sake, I was ready for whatever came next. The first few days at my parents' house were a blur of emotions. Alex was quiet and withdrawn, spending most of his time in the workshop, running his hands over the tools his grandfather had used. As for me, I threw myself into practical matters. I contacted a lawyer, filed for divorce, and started the process of securing Alex's inheritance. My lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Rachel, didn't mince words. This is going to get ugly, Tamara, she warned me during our first meeting. Your husband's going to fight dirty for that money. True to Rachel's prediction, things got ugly fast. Mark wasted no time in filing for full custody of Alex, citing my unstable emotional state following my parents' death. It was a low blow, but I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was the knock on the door late one evening, about a week after we'd left. When I opened it, I found Mark and Jessica standing there, both wearing smug expressions. I felt my blood boil, but I kept my voice level. What do you want? Mark stepped forward, his face a mask of false concern. We're here to talk about Alex, Tamara. He needs his father. You're not in any condition to raise him alone. That's rich, coming from you, I spat. Where was this concern for Alex all these years? Jessica laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Oh, honey, you don't get it, do you? We're going to take everything from you. The kid, the money, all of it. I promised I'd make you pay, didn't I? I gripped the doorframe tightly, fighting the urge to slam the door in their faces. Is that what this is about, Jessica? Revenge? Partly, she admitted with a shrug. But mostly, it's about the money. Your Brat's sitting on a fortune, and Mark and I intend to enjoy every penny of it. Mark at least had the decency to look uncomfortable at her bluntness. Now, darling, let's not be hasty. Shut up, Mark, Jessica snapped. She turned back to me, her eyes glittering with malice. Listen up, Tamara. I'm going to be Alex's new mommy. I'll raise him, spend his money, and there's nothing you can do about it. Something in me snapped. All the pain, anger, and fear of the past weeks came rushing to the surface. Before I knew what I was doing, my hand shot out and connected with Jessica's face with a resounding slap. She stumbled back, shock written all over her face. Mark caught her, looking between us with wide eyes. "Get off my property," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Both of you. And if you ever threaten my son again, I'll do a lot worse than slap you." I slammed the door shut, my heart pounding. As soon as it was closed, I sagged against it, trembling. What had I done? I'd just handed them ammunition to use against me in court. "Mom?" Alex's small voice came from the stairs. "What's going on?" I turned to see him standing there, fear evident in his eyes. I forced a smile onto my face. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just some grown-up stuff. Why don't we make some hot chocolate?" As I led Alex to the kitchen, my mind was racing. I needed to call Rachel, to tell her what happened. We needed a plan. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings, court appearances, and sleepless nights. One afternoon, as Alex was at a friend's house, Rachel called with news. "Tamara, we've got a break," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "Remember the woman whose husband Jessica stole? She's agreed to testify." My heart leapt. "That's great news. What will she say?" "Everything," Rachel replied. "How Jessica manipulated her way into their lives, how she mistreated the daughter. But be prepared. Mark and Jessica won't go down without a fight." She was right. The day of the custody hearing arrived, and the courtroom was tense. I sat on one side with Rachel, while Mark and Jessica sat on the other with their lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. The judge, a stern-faced woman named Judge Martinez, called the court to order. "We're here to determine custody of Alexander Thompson," she announced. "Let's begin." Mark's lawyer went first, painting a picture of me as an unstable, grieving woman unfit to care for a child. He brought up the slap incident, twisting it to make me sound violent and unpredictable. When it was our turn, Rachel calmly dismantled their arguments. She presented evidence of Mark's neglect, his affair, and his sudden interest in Alex only after the inheritance came into play. Then came our secret weapon. Sarah, the woman whose family Jessica had destroyed, took the stand. "Jessica came into our lives like a whirlwind," Sarah testified, her voice shaking slightly. "She seduced my husband, turned him against me. But worse, she tormented my daughter at school. Called her names, humiliated her in front of her classmates." I watched as Jessica's face paled, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Judge Martinez's expression was unreadable as she called for a recess. When court resumed, Judge Martinez's decision was swift and decisive. Having heard all the evidence, she began, "I find that it is in the best interest of Alexander Thompson to remain in the primary custody of his mother, Tamara Thompson." I felt tears of relief spring to my eyes as Judge Martinez continued. "Mr. Thompson will have visitation rights every other weekend, supervised until further notice. Furthermore, all decisions regarding Alexander's inheritance will be made by Mrs. Thompson, with oversight from a court-appointed financial guardian." As we left the courtroom, I saw Mark and Jessica in heated discussion with their lawyer. Mark looked defeated, while Jessica was red-faced with anger. I couldn't help but overhear their conversation. "Well, that's it then," Mark said to Jessica in an ingratiating tone. "Maybe it's for the best. The kid was always a burden anyway. It'll be easier for us if Tamara's his guardian." Jessica's face contorted with fury. "Easier for us?" she screamed, not caring who heard. "I don't need you without the money, you idiot. I needed that inheritance, not you and your bastard." Mark stood there, shoulders slumped, at a loss for words. Jessica stormed off, leaving him alone in the hallway. The months following the custody hearing were a time of healing and new beginnings. Alex and I settled into a routine in my parents' house, which now felt more like home than ever. I decided to take a leave of absence from teaching to focus on our family and figure out our next steps. One crisp autumn morning, as I was sorting through some of my father's old paperwork, I came across detailed plans for the furniture business. Sketches of beautiful, intricate designs filled page after page, along with notes on sustainable wood sourcing and innovative production methods. As I flipped through the pages, an idea began to form. My father had built this business from nothing, pouring his heart and soul into every piece he created. Could I do the same? Could I honor his legacy by continuing what he started? The thought both excited and terrified me. I knew nothing about running a business, let alone one as specialized as handcrafted furniture. But as I looked at Alex, happily playing with some wood scraps in the corner of the workshop, I knew I had to try. The next day, I called my father's old business partner, Tom. "Tamara, it's good to hear from you," Tom's gruff voice came through the phone. "How are you holding up?" "I'm doing better, Tom," I replied. "Listen, I've been thinking about Dad's business. I want to restart it." There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure about this, Tamara? It's not an easy business, especially these days." "I know it won't be easy," I said, "but I have to try. For Dad, for Alex, for myself. Will you help me?" Tom's chuckle warmed my heart. "Of course I'll help. Your dad would be proud of you, you know." Over the next few weeks, Tom became my mentor, teaching me everything he knew about the furniture business. We pored over Dad's old designs, discussed suppliers, and planned our revival strategy. As word spread that we were reopening the business, old customers started reaching out. Many shared fond memories of my father and expressed their excitement about the revival. One Saturday morning, as Alex and I were setting up our first small showcase in the workshop, there was a knock at the door. To my surprise, it was Sarah, the woman who had testified at the custody hearing. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by," she said hesitantly. "I heard you were reopening your father's business and, well, I wanted to see if you needed any help." I was touched by her offer. "That's so kind of you, Sarah. Please, come in." As we talked, I learned that Sarah had experience in marketing and social media. Her enthusiasm for our project was infectious, and before long, we were brainstorming ideas for promoting the business. "You know," Sarah said thoughtfully, "there's a big market for sustainable, ethically produced furniture these days. Your father's commitment to using responsibly sourced wood could be a real selling point." I nodded, feeling a surge of excitement. "You're right. We could build on that, maybe partner with local environmental groups." Our first major breakthrough came when a popular home decor magazine featured one of our pieces, a beautifully crafted oak dining table that had been one of my father's signature designs. Orders started pouring in, and soon we were struggling to keep up with demand. I hired a few of my father's old craftsmen who were eager to return to work, and even brought on an apprentice, a young woman named Maya who showed incredible promise. One evening, as I was locking up the workshop, I received an unexpected call. It was Mark. "I messed up, Tamara. Jessica, she left me. Turns out she was just after the money, and when that didn't pan out." Part of me wanted to feel satisfied, to revel in his misfortune. But mostly, I just felt tired. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mark. But why are you telling me this?" "I was hoping, maybe we could try again?" "For Alex's sake," he ventured. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. "No, Mark. That's not going to happen. We've both moved on. You should focus on being a better father to Alex during your visitations." After I hung up, I stood there for a moment, processing the conversation. It felt like the final chapter of my old life had closed, making way for the new. As the business grew, so did Alex. He was thriving in school and had become my unofficial assistant in the workshop. His creativity never ceased to amaze me, and some of his ideas had even made it into our designs. One Saturday morning, as we were preparing for a big craft fair, Alex came running into the workshop, waving a piece of paper. Mom, look what I drew," he exclaimed, thrusting the paper into my hands. I looked down to see a sketch of a rocking chair, but with an unusual curved base that allowed it to rock in multiple directions. "See, it's for Grandma Sarah at my school," he explained excitedly. "She has arthritis and says normal rocking chairs hurt her back. This one lets her rock any way she wants." I stared at the drawing, impressed by both the creativity and the thoughtfulness behind it. Alex, this is brilliant. In fact, why don't we make it our special project for the craft fair? Over the next week, Alex and I worked tirelessly on his design. We consulted with an occupational therapist to ensure it would genuinely help people with mobility issues. Tom helped us refine the mechanics, and Maya threw herself into the intricate carving work. When we unveiled Alex's Omni Rocker at the craft fair, it was an instant hit. A local news station even did a segment on it, interviewing Alex about his inspiration. As I watched my son confidently explain his design to the reporter, I felt a surge of pride so strong it almost overwhelmed me. This was more than just a successful business venture, it was proof that we had not just survived, but thrived. Months passed, and our business continued to grow. We expanded our workshop, took on more apprentices, and even started a program to teach woodworking skills to at-risk youth. Alex, now a teenager, had become an integral part of the business. His designs were innovative and popular, and he had a natural talent for working with customers. One evening, as we were closing up shop, Alex turned to me with a serious expression. "Mom," he said, "I've been thinking. After I finish school, I want to study business and design. I want to take over the company someday, if that's okay with you." Tears sprang to my eyes as I pulled him into a hug. "Of course it's okay. It's more than okay. It's everything your grandpa and I could have hoped for." As we walked home that night, hand in hand, I marveled at the journey we'd been on. From the depths of despair, we had built not just a successful business, but a legacy. A legacy of craftsmanship, integrity, and love. I thought of my parents, of the lessons they'd taught me, of the strength they'd instilled in me. I wished they could see us now, could see how their grandson had embraced their passion and carried it forward. As Alex and I reached our front porch, I paused for a moment, looking up at the stars. "Thank you," I whispered, to my parents, to the universe, to whatever force had guided us through our darkest times to this moment of peace and purpose.